Why rest is not the opposite of performance. It is the engine of it. In the 1980s and 90s, surgical residents in the United States routinely worked shifts of 36 hours or more. The culture was explicit. Sleep was weakness. Endurance was virtue. Then, researchers began tracking what actually happened during those marathon shifts. A landmark study published in the New England Journal of Medicine found that interns on extended schedules made 36% more serious medical errors than those working shorter shifts with adequate rest. 36% more errors. In surgery, where the cost of a single error can be a human life. In 2003, the United States government mandated a maximum 80-hour week for medical residents, not because they wanted doctors to work less, but because the evidence of harm had become impossible to ignore. Here is the question this episode is really about. If fatigue produces 36% more errors in surgery, what is it doing to the quality of your decisions, your relationships, and your leadership every single day? Welcome back to The Catalyst. This is episode 8. Today, we are talking about rest, what it actually does, why we avoid it, and why the highest performing individuals and organizations in the world have built it into the center of how they work. Let us start with the science. For most of the 20th century, scientists assumed that when the brain was not focused on a task, it was essentially idle. Brain imaging technology in the early 2000s revealed something completely different. When we stop focused work, a specific network of brain regions activates spontaneously. Researchers call it the default mode network. Far from being inactive, it drives our most valuable cognitive functions: creative problem solving, emotional processing, memory consolidation, future planning, and empathy. Neuroscientist Marcus Reichel found that the default mode network consumes more energy than the focused attention networks. Your brain at rest is not idle. It is doing different work, and in many ways, more important work. This is why your best ideas come in the shower, on a walk, or in the moments between sleep and waking. Archimedes in his bath. Newton under the apple tree. The default mode network only activates when you genuinely stop interrupting it. There is also the concept of ultradian rhythms, the natural 90-minute cycles governing cognitive performance throughout the day. Nathaniel Kleitman, who discovered REM sleep, found that the brain oscillates between higher and lower alertness roughly every 90 minutes. As each cycle completes, the brain signals a need for recovery through yawning, mind-wandering, difficulty concentrating. That signal is not weakness. It is information. And the professional response to information is to use it. Now the numbers. Because the case for breaks is not a wellness argument. It is a performance argument. A productivity tracking company called Graugium Group studied their most productive employees. The top 10% worked for an average of 52 minutes and then took a 17-minute break. Not more hours than their colleagues, but more deliberate rhythms. Output quality and quantity were both significantly higher. NASA's research on pilot fatigue found that a 26-minute nap improved pilot performance by 34% and alertness by 100%. This became the scientific basis for controlled rest periods in commercial aviation. Microsoft's research team found that back-to-back video meetings caused a measurable buildup of beta waves associated with stress and reduced cognitive capacity. A single break between meetings reset the pattern completely. A single break. And John Pencavel at Stanford found that output per hour declines sharply beyond 50 working hours per week. Working 70 hours produces no more measurable output than 55. Those extra 15 hours are, in documented terms, completely wasted. So if the evidence is this clear, why do so many workplaces continue to glorify overwork? The answer traces to the industrial era, when hours worked was a direct proxy for output. In physical repetitive labor, this logic made sense. In knowledge work, the domain of project managers, engineers, strategists, and leaders, it is entirely wrong. Output is determined not by hours of effort, but by the quality of thinking applied. And the quality of thinking is directly governed by the state of the brain producing it. Researcher Erin Reed at Boston University found that managers could not distinguish between employees who actually worked 80 hours and those who merely performed 80-hour work. Answering emails at 11 p.m., being last to leave, signaling constant availability. The performance of overwork was rewarded equally with the reality of it. So everyone performed it. And the culture reinforced itself. The consequences: decision fatigue that produces worse choices as the day progresses. Creative collapse that persists for days after intense overwork. And reduced empathic capacity. The chronically fatigued project manager is measurably less able to read their team, less patient in difficult conversations, more likely to misinterpret ambiguous communication as hostile. The person who never takes breaks is not a better leader. The evidence says they are a worse one. Not all breaks are created equal. Nature breaks are among the most reliably restorative. Even 20 minutes in a natural setting measurably restores directed attention and reduces cortisol by 12 to 16%. Japan has formalized this as Shinrin-yoku, forest bathing, now a recognized medical practice. Movement breaks restore blood flow to the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for decision-making, which is physically reduced by prolonged sitting. Stanford researcher Marilio Pezzo found that walking increased creative output by an average of 81%. Even a treadmill facing a blank wall produced the same effect. It is the movement, not the scenery. Power naps carry one of the strongest evidence bases of any break type. The sweet spot is 10 to 20 minutes, short enough to avoid deep sleep grogginess. Google, Nike, and Zappos all introduced nap rooms based on the NASA research. Social breaks, the coffee with a colleague, the brief conversation, activate the brain's parasympathetic recovery system. MIT's Human Dynamics laboratory found that the single most reliable predictor of team productivity was the frequency and quality of informal interaction during breaks. Not meeting quality, not individual skill. Breaks. So what does this look like in practice? Work in 90-minute focused blocks. Use the first block for your most cognitively demanding work. This is the peak of your first ultradian cycle, the most valuable 90 minutes of your day. After each block, take a genuine 15 to 20-minute break. And this is the part that matters most. Genuine mental disengagement. Not email, not Slack, an actual change of mental state. A walk if you can. The default mode network only activates when you genuinely stop. As the day progresses, shift your work type accordingly. Reserve meetings and collaborative tasks for the third and fourth blocks, when creative capacity is lower. Save your most consequential decisions for the morning. Major choices made late in a heavy workday are significantly more likely to need reversal. 3 rules for every break. 1. Genuine mental disengagement. A real change of mental state, not a change of screen. 2. Physical movement, even 2 to 5 minutes. 3. Respect the signal. When your brain signals fatigue, that is information, not weakness. Honoring it is professional intelligence. The organizational evidence is striking. Iceland's 4-day working week trial, conducted from 2015 to 2019 across 2,500 workers, found that productivity held or improved in the majority of workplaces and worker well-being improved across every measured dimension. By 2021, 86% of Iceland's entire workforce had moved to shorter hours or gained the right to negotiate them. Microsoft Japan gave all 2,300 employees Fridays off for 1 month. Productivity measured by sales per employee increased by 39.9%. A 20% reduction in working hours produced a 40% increase in output. Exactly what the neuroscience predicts. These organizations are not doing this out of generosity. They're doing it because the data made it financially irrational not to. For project managers, the implications extend beyond personal performance. They extend to the culture you create for your team. Your break culture is your team's break culture. If you never take visible breaks, your team takes fewer breaks. If you respond to messages at 11 at night, your team feels the implicit pressure to do the same. The inverse is equally true. When you take a visible midday walk, you give your team permission to do the same. When you protect lunch from meetings, you signal that you understand the physiology of sustained performance. When you schedule consequential decisions for mornings, you improve the quality of every decision your team makes. 5 things to carry with you from this episode. 1. Rest is not the opposite of performance. It is the engine of it. The default mode. Network, which only activates during genuine rest, produces creativity, insight, empathy, and strategic thinking. Starving it starves your output. 2. Your brain runs on 90-minute ultradian cycles. Working in alignment with those cycles produces more and better output than fighting through fatigue with willpower. 3. Past 50 hours per week, additional hours produce no additional output. Overwork is not a productivity strategy. It is a performance tax. You pay with your own cognitive capacity. 4. Hustle culture persists, not because it works, but because it looks like it works. That is a measurement problem, not a performance reality. 5. Your break culture is your team's break culture. Model rest deliberately. Your team is watching. Here is your action for today. Look at tomorrow's calendar. Find one 90-minute block where you will do your deepest work. Schedule a genuine 20-minute break after it. Not a meeting, not a scroll, a walk. Outside if you can. That is not a small thing. That is the beginning of a practice. And practices, repeated daily, change outcomes. Share this episode with someone on your team who needs permission to rest. It might be exactly what they need to hear. The Catalyst continues.